2019, the NCAA modified its rules around the pre-draft process. And since that time, under NCAA rules, student athletes who wish to test the waters, enter the draft as an early entry candidate, and still wishing to preserve the possibility of returning to school, they first have to seek undergraduate advisory committee feedback. And since then, we've really worked closely to provide educational outreach to the college basketball community so they understand how these rules interact. I do want to make clear that under NBA rules, undergraduate advisory committee feedback is still only optional. So under NBA rules, it's not a requirement that a player would seek UAC feedback before entering the draft. But what the UAC is intended to do, first and foremost, is to help men's basketball student athletes make informed decisions at a very important time in their lives. And we find that the more we can educate student athletes, their coaches, players, family about the process, the more comfortable they become. So the UAC has actually been around for quite a while, over 20 years, in fact. But we continue to enhance the educational outreach. It consists of senior basketball executives from all 30 NBA teams and is managed by the NBA League office. What we do when a student athlete applies for feedback from the Undergraduate Advisory Committee is that we submit that name to teams, all 30 teams, in fact, and we ask those teams to identify where they believe that player is most likely to be drafted in that year's draft. We're not making an assessment as to how that player might project longer term. We're not making an assessment of that player's strengths and weaknesses on the basketball court. We are simply asking our 30 teams, and those are the teams that essentially decide whether a player is ready to enter our league by virtue of who they select in the draft, who they offer free agent contracts to for those players who aren't selected in the draft. So those are the 30 organizations that matter, and we go to them and we ask them to provide us with feedback as to where they see that particular player if he's inclined to enter that year's draft. We then take that information, compile it, we de-identify it, and aggregate it for the student athlete and provide him with that feedback in writing, which is a new feature for many years for coaches, for college coaches who have been around this process. They know that all of this used to happen over the phone, and that provided some relationship benefits. I think college players and coaches enjoyed the conversation with folks at the league office, but based on feedback from the coaching community, we learned that we could do a better job of providing feedback that is more clear and more actionable. And so this will now be the third consecutive year that we make sure that every UAC applicant receives feedback in the same standard written form that provides them with an indication of where, based on the surveying of all NBA teams that we've done, that player is most likely to be drafted. And then we also actually share, again, on a de-identified basis, the vote breakdown so that a student athlete will know that, hey, maybe 40% of teams think that I'm going to be selected in the first half of the second round. 40% think that I'm going to be selected in the second half of the second round. But there are, and maybe I should be a little focused on this, there are 20%, for example, that think I will go undrafted. So we try to operate with optimal transparency. We try to provide that information in a straightforward fashion. This will be the third year that we've done it. And since we made that adjustment in conjunction with some of the NCAA rule changes in 2019, the feedback from the college basketball community has been very positive.